I stood on my front porch that Tuesday morning, coffee in hand, looking at the house I had worked 5 years to buy. It was mine. Every shingle, every window, every square foot. I was 32 years old, and this was the first thing I had ever truly owned. The sun was just coming up over the neighborhood in Portland, Oregon, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. Then I saw it. A yellow envelope on my doorstep. I picked it up, tore it open, and my stomach dropped. Court documents. My mother, Patricia, was suing me. She wanted my house. Before I dive into how my own mother tried to steal everything I worked for, I would love to know, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you have ever dealt with family drama that made you question everything, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you will want to hear how this story ends. Because what she did not know was that I had been preparing for this fight long before she ever filed those papers. Let us get into it. Buying this house was not easy. I worked 2 jobs for 5 years straight. During the day, I was a shift manager at a restaurant downtown. At night, I did freelance graphic design from my tiny apartment, sometimes working until 3 in the morning. I said no to trips with friends. I cooked every meal at home. I wore the same 5 shirts for 3 years because I refused to spend money on anything that was not absolutely necessary. Every single dollar went into my savings account. I had a goal, and nothing was going to stop me from reaching it. The house I found was a 2-bedroom ranch on the outskirts of Portland. It was not fancy. The paint was peeling, the kitchen cabinets were outdated, and the backyard was overgrown with weeds. But I saw potential. The listing price was $280,000. I had saved $56,000 for the down payment. It was everything I had. When the seller accepted my offer, I cried. I actually cried. This was my dream coming true. Then Patricia called. My mother and I had a complicated relationship. She was not the most responsible person when I was growing up. Money disappeared as fast as it came in. Bills went unpaid. We moved apartments 6 times before I turned 18. But when I told her I was buying a house, she seemed genuinely happy for me. She said she wanted to help. A week before closing, she showed up at my apartment with a check for $5,000. I was shocked. $5,000 was not nothing. She told me she had been saving it and wanted to contribute to my new home. I felt something I had not felt in years. Hope. Hope that maybe our relationship could be different now. Maybe she had changed. I took the money, thanked her, and promised I would pay her back once I got settled. The day I moved in was one of the happiest days of my life. Marcus and Dylan, my 2 closest friends, helped me carry boxes inside. We ordered pizza, sat on the floor because I did not have furniture yet, and talked about the future. I felt proud. I felt accomplished. I felt like I had finally made it. Patricia started visiting a lot. At first I thought it was sweet. She would bring over casseroles, ask how the renovations were going, and offer to help paint the bedroom. But then things started to feel off. She would show up without calling first. I would come home from work and find her sitting on my couch, having let herself in. When I asked how she got in, she reminded me she still had the spare key I had given her for emergencies. I started to feel uncomfortable, but I told myself I was being paranoid. She was my mother. Of course she wanted to be involved. Then the comments started. She did not like the color I painted the living room. She said the blue was too dark, and I should have gone with beige. She criticized the couch I bought, saying it was too expensive, and I should have shopped at the discount furniture store she liked. Every time she visited, she had an opinion about something. It felt like she was trying to control my space. But I brushed it off. I figured she was just trying to help in her own way. One afternoon, my neighbor, Mrs. Kowalski, an older woman who lived 3 houses down, stopped me while I was mowing the lawn. She was kind, always smiling, the type of person who baked cookies for the whole street. She said something that made my stomach twist. She told me Patricia had been talking to some of the other neighbors, saying things like, "This is my house," and "My son and I live here now." I laughed it off at first. I thought maybe Patricia was just proud and phrasing things awkwardly, but Mrs. Kowalski looked concerned. She said, "Jorge, I just thought you should know. It seems strange to me." A few days later, Patricia asked me for a spare key. Not the emergency key she already had, but another one. She said she wanted to be able to check on things if I was out of town, or if something went wrong with the plumbing. I hesitated. Something in my gut told me this was not a good idea. But she was my mother. How could I say no? I gave her the key. That was a mistake. A week later, I came home from work around 6 in the evening. I opened the front door and froze. Patricia was sitting in my living room, flipping through a magazine like she owned the place. I had not invited her over. She had not called. She just let herself in. When I asked what she was doing there, she said she wanted to check the pipes under the sink because she thought she heard a drip last time she visited. I told her she could have called first. She shrugged and said, "I have a key, do I not?" For the first time, I felt genuinely angry. This was my house, not hers. But I did not say anything. I just asked her to leave and told her I would handle the pipes myself. 3 months after I moved in, I knew I had to set boundaries. I could not keep living like this, feeling like a guest in my own home. I invited Patricia over for dinner one evening and decided to have a serious conversation. I made spaghetti, set the table, and rehearsed what I was going to say in my head about 10 times. When she arrived, she seemed cheerful, completely unaware of what was coming. After we ate, I took a deep breath and said, "Mom, I need to talk about boundaries. This is my house, and I need my privacy. I love that you want to be involved, but I cannot have you just showing up whenever you want. I need you to call first." Her face changed instantly. The smile disappeared. Her eyes narrowed, and her voice turned ice cold. She said, "Your house, I gave you $5,000. Without me, you would not have this place." I tried to stay calm. I explained, "Mom, that was a gift. I paid for 98% of this house myself. I worked 2 jobs for 5 years to make this happen." She pulled out her phone, scrolled through her messages, and then read aloud, "Right here. I texted you. This will help with your house. I never said it was a gift." I remembered that text. It was vague. It could be interpreted different ways. But I had always assumed it was a gift, because she never mentioned anything about ownership or investment. I said, "Mom, you are my mother. I thought you were just being generous." She stood up, grabbed her purse, and said something that still haunts me. She said, "We will see what a lawyer has to say about this." Then she walked out, slamming the door behind her. I sat there for an hour, staring at the wall. I could not believe what had just happened. My own mother was threatening to sue me. Over what? A house I had bought with my own money. I felt sick. I felt betrayed. And for the first time, I felt scared. 2 weeks later, the yellow envelope showed up on my doorstep. Inside were court documents. Patricia was suing me, claiming she had invested $5,000 into the property, and therefore had a right to partial ownership. She was demanding either $150,000 or that I sell the house and split the proceeds with her. I could not breathe. This could not be happening. I immediately called a lawyer. His name was Mr. Harrison, a man in his early 50s, with decades of experience in family law. I sat in his office and told him everything. He listened carefully, took notes, and then asked the one question I was dreading. "Do you have any documentation that the $5,000 was a gift?" I showed him the text messages. They were ambiguous at best. "Mr." Harrison leaned back in his chair and said, "This could go either way. Family court is unpredictable. Judges sometimes favor parents, especially if they can make a sympathetic case." He explained that defending myself would cost money. A lot of money. The retainer fee alone was $5,000. If the case went to trial, I could be looking at $20,000 to $30,000 in legal fees. I felt like I was drowning. I had just bought a house. I did not have that kind of money lying around. But I also could not let Patricia take everything I had worked for. I signed the retainer agreement and walked out of that office feeling numb. The stress started to take over my life. I could not sleep. I would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation I had ever had with Patricia. I stopped eating regular meals. I lost 12 pounds in 3 weeks. At work, I made mistakes I never would have made before. I forgot to place orders, mixed up schedules, and snapped at coworkers who did not deserve it. Marcus and Dylan noticed. They tried to help, inviting me out for drinks, offering to talk, but I could not shake the weight pressing down on my chest. I kept thinking, what if she wins? What if I lose my house? But Patricia was not done. She did not just file a lawsuit. She launched a full campaign to destroy my reputation. She called every family member we had. She told my Aunt Diane, my father's sister, that I was an ungrateful son who had kicked her out of the house after she helped me buy it. Diane called me, her voice filled with disappointment, saying, "Jorge, how could you treat your mother like this?" I tried to explain. I told her the truth, but she did not want to hear it. Patricia had gotten to her first, and her version of the story was the one Diane believed. Patricia also talked to the neighbors. She went door to door, telling anyone who would listen that she had given me everything, and now I was trying to steal from her. Some people believed her. I could see it in the way they looked at me when I walked to my car in the morning, but Mrs. Kowalski did not. She came over one evening, knocked on my door, and said, "Jorge, I do not know what your mother is telling people, but I know the truth. I have watched you work on this house. I have seen how much you have put into it. Do not let her take it from you." Her words meant more to me than she will ever know. Through Mr. Harrison, I learned more about Patricia's past. She had done this before. 5 years ago, she sued an ex-boyfriend, claiming he owed her money she had lent him. She lost that case because she had no documentation, but it showed a pattern. Patricia saw opportunities where she could manipulate the system, and she took them. Mr. Harrison said, "Your mother is not going to stop. She thinks she can win because you are her son, and you will not fight back. You need to prove her wrong." 2 weeks before the court date, Patricia called me. It was the first time we had spoken in 2 months. Her voice was sweet, almost sickeningly so. She said, "Jorge, honey, we do not have to go to court. Just give me what I deserve, $75,000, and we can end this." I said, "Mom, you gave me $5,000. That does not entitle you to $75,000. Her voice turned sharp. "Fine. See you in court. And trust me, the judge will see things my way. A poor mother who helped her ungrateful son." She hung up. I sat on the kitchen floor and cried. I had not cried since I was a teenager, but the weight of everything finally broke me. I felt hopeless. What if she was right? What if the judge felt sorry for her and ruled in her favor? I could lose everything. Marcus showed up an hour later with pizza. He did not say much at first. He just sat with me. Then he said, "Man, I know this is hell, but you have got something she does not, the truth. And you have been smart about documenting everything right." That is when it hit me. I had not just been sitting around feeling sorry for myself. I had been gathering evidence. I called Mr. Harrison and said, "I need to know every single option I have. I want to fight this with everything." He said, "Good. Because I think we have more ammunition than you realize." Over the next 2 weeks, Mr. Harrison and I built a case. I pulled together every piece of documentation I could find. Bank statements showing that I had saved $56,000 over 5 years. Mortgage documents with only my name on them proving Patricia was not a co-signer. Receipts for every repair I had made to the house: new roof, updated electrical, fresh paint totaling $12,000, all paid by me. Every single piece of paper told the same story: this house was mine. I also gathered text messages and emails. There was one email from 2 years before I even bought the house where Patricia wrote, "I am so proud of you for saving so diligently for your dream home." Another text from the day she gave me the money said, "Hope this helps, sweetheart. Love, Mom." Nowhere did she mention investment ownership or any expectation of return. It was clear she had intended it as a gift. Mrs. Kowalski agreed to testify. She said she would tell the court exactly what Patricia had said to the neighbors, and how the story had changed over time. Marcus and Dylan also agreed to be witnesses. They would confirm that I had been planning to buy a house for years, and that Patricia only became involved after the purchase was complete. Mr. Harrison also dug into Patricia's financial history. He found records of her mounting credit card debt, $32,000 spread across 4 cards. He found records of the previous lawsuit she had filed and lost. He painted a picture of a woman who was desperate for money and willing to exploit her own son to get it. The night before the court date, I could not sleep. I went over everything in my head, rehearsing what I would say, imagining every possible outcome. Mr. Harrison had told me we had a strong case, but he also warned me that judges could be unpredictable, especially when it came to family matters. I tried to stay calm, but my heart would not stop racing. The next morning, I put on my navy blue suit, the one I had bought for job interviews years ago. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. I looked tired. I looked worn down. But I also looked determined. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Multnomah County Courthouse, downtown Portland. The walls were plain, the lighting fluorescent and harsh. Patricia was already there. When I arrived, sitting with her lawyer, a sharp-looking woman in her 40s, named Miss Brennan, Patricia did not look at me. She kept her eyes forward, her face expressionless. When the judge walked in, everyone stood. Judge Martinez was a woman in her 60s, with short gray hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. She sat down, adjusted her glasses, and said, "Let us begin." Miss Brennan spoke first. She painted a picture of Patricia as a selfless mother who had sacrificed everything to raise her son. She said Patricia had given a significant financial contribution to the house and that Jorge had promised she would always have a home with him. She said that after Patricia helped him, Jorge had turned his back on her, refusing to acknowledge her investment. Then Patricia took the stand. She cried. Her voice shook as she said, "I gave him everything. I just wanted a place to feel safe in my old age. He promised I could always have a home with him." She looked directly at me, tears streaming down her face, and said, "I do not understand how my own son could do this to me." I felt my jaw clench. It was all a performance. Every word was calculated, but I could see some people in the courtroom believed her. Then it was our turn. Mr. Harrison stood up and methodically dismantled Patricia's case. He presented the text messages and emails, showing that Patricia had never mentioned investment or ownership. He showed the bank statements proving I had saved $56,000 on my own. He showed the mortgage documents with only my name. He presented receipts for every dollar I had spent on the house since moving in. He said, "Your Honor, Miss Patricia gave her son $5,000. That is true. But nowhere in any communication did she ever indicate this was an investment. Nowhere did she ask for documentation or a contract. She gave it as a gift, and now that her son has set boundaries, she does not like she is attempting to exploit the legal system, to take what is not hers." Then I took the stand. My hands were shaking, but I forced myself to speak clearly. I said, "Your Honor, I love my mother, but this house is the result of 5 years of sacrifice. I worked 2 jobs, I skipped vacations, I saved every penny. She gave me $5,000 as a gift, and I was grateful. But that does not give her the right to take what I built." I paused, looked at the judge, and said I wanted a relationship with my mom. But she saw my success as an opportunity to exploit me. Mrs. Kowalski testified next. She told the court how Patricia had initially referred to the house as my son's house, but later changed her story to our house when conflicts arose. Marcus testified about how I had talked about buying a house for years and how Patricia only appeared after the purchase was done. When all the evidence was presented, Judge Martinez took a long moment to review the documents. The room was silent. I could hear my own heartbeat. Finally, she looked up and said, "After reviewing all evidence, the court finds that the $5,000 in question was a gift, not an investment. Miss Patricia has provided no documentation to support her claim of ownership. The property belongs solely to Mr. Jorge. The case is dismissed. I felt like a 1,000-pound weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I wanted to cry, but I held it together. Patricia stood up, her face red with anger, and shouted, "This is not over." Then she stormed out of the courtroom. Mr. Harrison shook my hand. "You stood your ground. Be proud." Marcus and Dylan were waiting outside. They hugged me, congratulating me, telling me they knew I would win. But I did not feel like celebrating. I felt exhausted. I felt relieved, but I also felt sad. Because no matter how this ended, I had lost my mother. The months after the trial were hard, but they were also healing. I started going to therapy to work through the pain of what Patricia had done. My therapist helped me understand that it was not my fault. Patricia had her own issues, her own demons, and I could not fix them. Setting boundaries was not cruel. It was necessary. I threw myself into my life. I got promoted to assistant manager at the restaurant. My freelance design work picked up, and I started taking on bigger projects. I repainted the house in the colors I actually liked, soft greens and warm grays. I bought furniture that felt like me, not what anyone else thought I should have. Slowly, the house started to feel like a home again. Marcus and Dylan remained my closest friends. Mrs. Kowalski became like family. She invited me over for dinner once a week, and we would sit on her porch and talk about everything and nothing. My Aunt Diane eventually reached out. She apologized for not believing me at first, and said she was starting to see Patricia for who she really was. As for Patricia, I never heard from her again. I heard through Diane that she moved to another city far from Portland. Part of me felt sad about that. Part of me wished things could have been different. But I also knew I had made the right choice. Loving someone does not mean letting them destroy you. I learned that setting boundaries is not cruelty. It is self-preservation. I learned that sometimes the people who should protect us are the ones we need protection from, and that is okay. It does not make you a bad person to walk away from someone who is hurting you, even if that someone is family. I still own my house. It is small, it is imperfect, but it is mine. The mortgage is in my name. The walls are painted. The colors I chose, and every single thing inside it represents the work I put in. And more importantly, I own my peace now too. I do not lie awake at night worrying about Patricia showing up unannounced. I do not second-guess every decision I make. I am free. Sometimes the hardest battles we fight are with the people we love. But winning does not always mean they lose. It means you finally choose yourself. And that is worth every penny I spent on that lawyer. So let me ask you, have you ever had to set boundaries with family, even when it felt impossible? Have you ever had to fight for something you knew was rightfully yours? Drop your story in the comments. I would love to hear how you handled it. And if this story resonated with you, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes we all need a reminder that standing up for ourselves is not selfish. It is survival. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps you find the strength to protect what is yours, whether that is a house, your peace, or your own sense of self-worth. Take care of yourselves out there. You deserve it.